Hi kids. This beautiful 2006 Toyota Highlander belongs to a friend of mine, and she was driving it around and it started acting weird one day, so she had it towed to her favorite shop, and they told her that it needed a head gasket and it was something that they wouldn't bother with, and they couldn't think of a single shop in all of Nashville that can replace a head gasket. Everybody's telling her to total out the vehicle. Now, she loves this thing, and it's paid for, so I offered to take a look at it and see what I thought was wrong with it. I'm going to go through the list of things that I check on a car to find out if it's got a bad head gasket or not. So this is a Toyota V6 3.3, a VVT, which is their version of the VTEC, like Honda has. And I got a question for you. You see anything wrong with that? Because I do. This may or may not have cost her a head gasket. But I'm not getting, that feels like antifreeze. That doesn't feel like motor oil, which is one of the things you might have if you blew a head gasket. You might be pushing motor oil into the cooling system. A more typical thing though is that the coolant from the cooling system gets pushed into the oil system. When all of your coolant ends up in your oil system because you've got a blown head gasket, is that this dipstick will be covered in white foamy crud. And if you can see that, that looks like kind of used but very nice engine oil. So far I'm not seeing evidence of a blown head gasket. Let's fire it up and see what it sounds like. Geez, that's just as smooth as it can be. There's not a misfire or anything. A lot of times when I've seen Toyotas have a blown head gasket, it'll misfire for a while on one of the cylinders until it burns the coolant out of that cylinder, and then it'll smooth out if it's a minor head gasket leak. Let's go check the tailpipe and see if we have fog. Now, the car's been sitting a few days. If you're burning coolant, you can smell it in the exhaust a lot of times. I don't really smell that as coolant. So far, I'm not 100% sure that we have a blown head gasket. Turn the air conditioner on and both the fans come on, so those seem to be working properly. So what I'm doing now is filling the cooling system up with some fine high quality H2O. No, you should not run your system on water, but this is a test. And we know we have a leak in the cooling system, and we're trying to figure out where that leak is. So we're going to fill the cooling system up with water and see if we can figure out where that water goes. Does it go into the head gasket? Does it end up in the engine oil? Does it run out on the ground? Does it run out the tailpipe? That's what we're trying to figure out. Let's put the cap on, fire it up, let it come up to temp, see what we end up with. By now you guys have figured out that I have some trust issues when it comes to shops and mechanics and mechanic shops. Now my friend who owns this car trusts the shop that it was at very much. That's why she had it towed there. And she takes their word as gospel. And she was in an absolute panic when they told her this car was unsalvageable and needed to go to the junkyard and she needed to go buy another car. I strongly suspect that they just didn't want to mess with it. Typically when you've got a blown head gasket, you'll get a misfire on one of the cylinders and it'll get a check engine light. Don't even have that. I don't know yet. That's why we call this the testing phase. So I went ahead and cooked up my code reader, and I was reading a code for low temp on the cooling system. So I've reset that and we're trying to see what it does. But as you can see, the temp is holding steady right where it should be, right in the middle. So now that she's come all the way up to temp, we're gonna let it cool down a little bit. I'm gonna check that engine oil again. And if it looks like a milkshake, well then that's a good sign that our water has ended up in our oil system. And that's what we're looking for. Let's take a minute to check out this fine automobile. Kind of the top of the line, maybe, the Limited. It's got aluminum wheels. Let's see, so that's a 2-wheel drive. They do make a 4-wheel drive, but this one's the 2-wheel drive. The little spoiler things on the back and the roof racks and the whatnot. Nice car. Check this out. It's got CD and cassette. JBL. Ooh, baby. Now that we brought the car up to temp, let it cool back down, let's check our oil again. The oil looks brand new. Look at that. Sparkly, pretty oil. Yeah, nothing wrong with the oil. Let's check our coolant again. Extremely low. Extremely low. Let's fill it back up and do this again. What I'm looking for is something called a hydro lock. I want to know if this water ended up in those cylinders, because if it did, the car probably won't be able to start, or it'll have a very hard time starting because it's trying to compress water, and you can't compress water. You can only compress gas. So let's see if it sounds like a big clunk when I go and turn the key. Nope, once again, she starts like a top. Let's go check that exhaust again. See if it looks like a bunch of steam. It doesn't really. So no hydro lock, no steam in the exhaust. So what I'm gonna do now is let it idle, and I'm gonna keep pouring the water to it until it quits taking it. Keep adding water, and a little bit keeps disappearing. I got the heater cranked up, and here's something I've noticed. That looks like water to me. The question now is it hot or cold? Well, it's hot. If it were cold, I would say it might be coming from the air conditioner, but it's hot, so it's definitely coming from the engine. That looks like it's coming out of the timing cover. Running out like a waterfall. Where is that coming from? Timing cover. Where's the water pump? Curious, because this shop supposedly just put in a water pump. And it looks like it's leaking. Haven't had a chance to mess with it till today. I just come out here, fill the water up. The car is cold. It's not even running. And we go down here, and the water dumps straight out the bottom, even without the car being hot or running. I cannot understand how that could ever be a head gasket. So we're gonna start by changing the water pump. All you guys that guessed water pump, that's where we're going. So next thing I'm going to do is take off this big plastic cover so I can get to the spark plugs. A couple of 7mm Allen head bolts going across the front of this. Squirrels have been hiding goodies in here. Now the fact that the car was, got hot enough to make my friend get very concerned, maybe she did blow a head gasket after running it all out of water. I don't know. We're gonna have to find out. We're gonna do his compression test. Let's see what that tells us. We'll start by cleaning up some of this squirrel crud here. Where I live, squirrels like to get under your hood and stash goodies, snacks, So we're gonna yank these front 3 coils. They're the easy ones to get. Wow, all the tabs that hold this to the coils are broken off or eaten off, I don't know. These should not be this easy to pull off. These are 10mm, just like on your various Honda products. Not a whole lot of difference at the moment. So let's go ahead and blast these out. the bucket. Making sure to put all of these in the bucket because this isn't my car. Coil number 1. Coil number 2. Got a little oil on that one. Coil number 3. Got a little oil on that one. Not terrible though. Using a spark plug socket for this. You don't have to use a spark plug socket for this. You can use a regular old socket if it'll fit on the spark plug. Radium Denso. Now this is our compression gauge. And on the one that I have, it has all these different ends on it. And you adjust this to the car you're working on. This is for little tiny spark plugs. We don't have those in this. I think it's this second size. So what you do is you just screw this piece off, set it aside, screw that one in. See how this goes. That's it. So these are the same spark plugs that are in your Honda, just in case you wanted to know. And the next thing I want to do is figure out which one of these relays or fuses or whatever runs the fuel pump. Alright, I think it's this 20 amp right here, electronic fuel injection, the EFI fuse. That should kill our fuel injectors and stop the thing from firing. Set that right there for now. I let it sit for a couple of minutes. It hasn't bled down any at all, so I'm going to say that's not a head gasket on that cylinder. Doesn't have to be all cylinders though. It could be just one cylinder blown through on the head gasket. So let's move on to the next cylinder. They're all coming up pretty consistent on the front side, so now we got to pull off this plenum, get to the back side. That kind of sucks, but that's just the way modern cars are. Can't get any further without taking this, what I'm going to call an emissions rail off. A couple of 10mm nuts, looks like, holds that on. A couple of 10mm nuts hold this rail on. Got that out of the way. Now I can get to that last Allen head. So this is where we are now. There's all those Allens that have to come out to let you get this hold down bar off. Now these are, I guess those are like 14mm. Is it? Yes it is. 14mm on those two. In the bucket. Let's go in the bucket. Now what do we got? Let's take this vacuum line loose. Let's try and take this, what the hell? What is that? Oh, geez, good grief. Okay, let's try and take this whole thing off. Fuel rail. Great. The sway bar's in the way. The strut mount bolts hold them on. Into the bucket. I shouldn't have to take this much junk off to get to the plugs, Toyota. I'll just say, I love Toyota, but this is the most amount of junk I've had to take off to get to a set of plugs in my life. This bracket is gonna have to come off. or the fuel rail has to come off, and I don't want to take the fuel rail off. Hey! This is the bracket I've had to take off. If you don't take it off, this thing just smacks into the bottom of the fuel rail. There's a little piece that comes around here, goes over to there. If you don't take it off, it smacks into this fuel line, which is connecting your fuel rails. So it's either take that bracket off or take the fuel rail off, and I don't want to take the fuel rail off. That's enough to do what we're trying to do, thank God. Now we can get to the back coils and the back plugs. This is interesting. See these? These are stabilizers that are supposed to be bolted into the back of this. No one bolted them in. That air line I'll have to hook back up, or vacuum line. These are all Densos. Interesting. These look like they've all been recently replaced. Let's just pull those out and leave them. Lay them back here. There's all three of those. See if I can get the plugs up without having to stand on my head. Cannot see what I work on. There we go. Ooh, that's too short. Let's not do that. Try this. Where's the hole? Where's the hole? There we go. All right. That ought to work. I'm just gonna pop it loose with that and then screw it out the rest of the way, because I don't want any crazy drama going on the backside of this motor. It looks really good. Nothing strange going on there. That one got a little oil on it, but still, the plug itself doesn't look bad. Oil on the threads just means the seal at the top is leaking. Not an issue, really. $200. Wow. Right at 200. We got now 200. So look, these compression checks are impressive. So any way you want to slice it up, that's good compression. I don't believe we have a blown head gasket, as I've suspected, and some of you commenting on Instagram said it's a water pump. The water pump is the problem. We're going to put a water pump in it. That's it for today's diagnostic video. The next one will be the repair video, where we actually pull the wheel off and pull the timing cover off, and maybe even the timing belt. I don't know. I've never worked on this particular type of motor before. This concept of having to take off your intake plenum to get to your rear coil packs and your rear spark plugs is common these days. This Toyota has it. I've had to do it on a Kia. I've had to do it on Mitsubishi. It's a very common thing these days, so get comfortable with this. It's not that intimidating. You can do this, I promise.